Buddhist Lamas, and she is an award-winning author. And finally, she is a mother, a grandmother, and a lover of dogs. So thank you, Lama Tsomo.
Thanks, Ellie. Well, welcome everybody. Glad to see you. And I actually can see most of you. And welcome to Glacier National Park in permanent sunset. So the IT guy gave me this background. I hope it's not too distracting. Anyway, let's begin by all having a moment of silence where we can drop into ourselves first. Noticing this breath in this moment and not labeling it as a breath, just experiencing the movement of your belly and the feeling of the coolness of the air in your nostrils or your mouth. The moment by moment experience. And the feeling of your legs and your rear sitting on the chair, the pressure. And moving out from that, noticing that actually the illusion that there's distance is something that the scientists as well as Buddhist masters for thousands of years have noticed it really is just an illusion. And especially in this time of physical distancing, let's connect with each other through the power of our minds and through knowing that we have a common source. And that's not something from the past, but something ongoing. And so we feel into that as we sit here together. All right. Well, so welcome again, now that we've maybe landed with each other a little bit. So this week is going to start out not exactly feeling like a feel-good talk, but I find when I have something I'm anxious about that's kind of looming from behind, it helps me to actually take it out from behind and put it in front and actually look at it and see what it is. So right now, there's a lot we could be anxious about. I think we could all be worried about, will we catch this terrible disease? Will somebody we love catch it? Will we lose somebody? Some of us might be worried we're going to lose our jobs, or the things we need. Some of us might be worried we're going to lose our democracy. And we're worried about how long this is going to go on, and will we have to sacrifice our health in order to pursue our lives again? So I think, there are a lot of things we're worried about losing. And perhaps one thing that we are losing right now is the illusion that we can make existence comfortable. I think we all kind of, in the backs of our minds, some of us more than others, think if I just tweak existence this way or that way, I can make it comfortable for myself, like I can be permanently happy. And I've lived in the land of if-onlys for a lot of my life. If only so and so liked me back. If only I could get that job that I want. If only this, if only that, then I'll be happy. Then life will be wonderful. And I've noticed I would get some of those things and then I would make more if onlys. There were always more and more if onlys. And also, I wasn't going to get all of the if onlys. I usually only get a small percentage of those. And so living in the land of if onlys is not living in this moment. And it's not a comfortable, happy way to live. So I think those of us who are living a more comfortable, privileged American life, we've been a little bit under the illusion that we can pursue those things and end up being happy. But even before COVID, what percentage of those things do we even get? And when we get those things, do they ever finish? Are we ever through with the if onlys? And are we ultimately permanently happy? Not so much. I have a friend who's a neuroscientist who's worked with the Dalai Lama and has used hard science to look at changes in the brain when we meditate. And in a book he wrote recently about how we can change the way our brain behaves, and even like how big and small different parts are and the pathways between them, so that not just on the cushion, but off the cushion, we can see changes follow through in our lives. And he had a simple thing to say: a distracted mind is an unhappy mind. So when we're making these movies about how life could be, we aren't living in life as it is. And that's always going to be problematic. So the Buddha discovered this a long time ago without a laboratory. And he noticed that life was mostly our projected movie on actual reality. And it's so much like a movie that he described these frames and then nothing in between, and another frame and nothing in between, like that, which is actually how we show movies, right? And each frame changes just a little bit in between, the blank spaces. And then our minds put together the continuity. We don't see the blank spaces in between. We just see the movie. So we're making movies all the time, a lot of which is our own habits of mind, habits of perceiving, things we want to have happen. We imagine we see them out there, things we're worried about, and so we focus on them so much, we see them, those paranoid sort of thoughts that some of us have more than others, but we all kind of have some of that once in a while that we're worried about, and we almost kind of make it happen because we're so focused on it. But what about those spaces in between? That actually gets very interesting. And so that's what the Buddha learned to be able to see. He slowed down the frames enough and let go of the movie enough. He was able to see reality as it really is. And it turned out it was way better than any movie, even the best if only movies. So on the converse side, I think we all intuitively know what I'm going to say. The further our perception of reality is from actual reality, the more unhappy we're going to be, because we're going to at some point bump into actual reality. And it's sometimes what we call a rude awakening, because we were going along, and boom, we bumped into actual reality. And it's shocking because it's so different. And we've probably just bumped into a wall because we didn't see it because we were watching our own movie. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. Um, an example I like to give is there was a woman who I knew really wanted a romantic relationship with my son. And he just, he really enjoyed her as a friend, but was not, it just wasn't romantic for him. And she kept playing this movie, superimposing that upon reality and seeing that actually he really liked her, which he did, but not in that way. But she kept seeing her own movie. And the longer this went on, of course, the more rude the awakening, when finally she had to face the fact that he was not into a romantic relationship with her. And so the friendship ended, which was too bad, you know. But there are lots of ways that we practice what one person called hopeful hearing and this kind of thing. And then eventually we come to a rude awakening. Interestingly, the name Buddha means one who's awake. But in his case, he was just living in reality as it really was. So there was no rudeness about being awake. It was, in fact, wonderful. And so after he had finally reached that point where he was just kind of past the point of no return and could just rest always in the way existence actually is, he came back to his old-time meditation buddies, and they could see he was just glowing, literally had an aura around him. And I think you've probably seen some, pictures and statues of the Buddha with a golden aura around him. Interestingly, in both Eastern and Western art, they show that aura around people, that they're glowing. Because apparently that was actually like people could physically see it in the case of the Buddha. So they were saying, wow, what have you been doing? We want some of that. And they said, describe to us, what is this reality you've found? What is true reality as you found it? Dharma means truth, by the way. And at first he fell silent because it's beyond concepts, and words carry concepts. So he was not going to be able to transmit it through words. After he was silent, then he taught the Four Noble Truths, which I won't get into. And one of the very first things he taught was shamatha, which is known as peaceful or calm abiding. And this is the ability to slow down the frames of the movie a little bit. And eventually, as you do that, you begin to glimpse in between the frames. And as you practice vipassana, which is then practiced in conjunction with shamatha, you begin to actually see real reality between those frames. So while I can't give you a feel-good talk that you're not going to lose all the things we talked about, or some of them, and that there's not going to be some difficulty, what I can offer is something that millions of people for thousands of years have found so useful when the ups and downs of life feel like a wild ocean. Because actually, it's not tame. We can't tame it. Western society has sure tried hard to tame it. And we've made a big mess. So maybe rather than trying to tame that ocean, better to learn how to surf. And instead of trying to control the outside, maybe easier to control the inside. because happiness, right, is an inside job. So, that's what we have more control over. And not a whole lot, by the way, but with some skillful methods and practicing, just like practicing anything else, we can get better and better. So if you want to get stronger and have more physical control, you can do yoga, various exercises, and so on. And you have to do them on a regular basis to develop that capacity, that strength, that balance, whatever it is. And it's the same with this. You take these tools, you use them even just a few minutes every day. And again, Richard Davidson and Daniel Goleman in their book show, and the book is called Altered Traits, they show how just in a few weeks' time, they were already seeing results off the cushion and just carrying through in daily life. They could see changes in the brain and so on. And, I never was in any of those lab tests, but I can say for myself that even though I still have a distractible mind and I still can't do the practices perfectly, it has made a huge difference for my experience of life. And I definitely have learned much better how to surf. So I want to teach you the shamatha meditation. Many people have probably studied it, and then many people may not have. But I think it'll be interesting to just get a different approach. But I want to start by, kind of not having me talk so much. And let's be quiet for just a minute. And as we're sitting here, I'd like to point out that while you're sitting here, you're not just doing nothing. For example, you're paying attention. You're sitting calmly, you're awake and aware, and paying attention. And you're also doing something that you do all the time. I'm also doing it. And you even do it while you're sleeping, while you're awake, all the time. And as some of you may have guessed, you're breathing. So already, if you can just use your attention that we just talked about and have it on your breathing, all you have to do is notice that, just like you had your attention on this lady in front of you and the sound of my voice and so on. Now your attention is on your breathing, on what is happening in this moment and this moment. Every moment slightly different. So that, my friends, is shamatha. So when I first was meditating, I had a lot of preconceived ideas about it that were wrong. I thought meditation is some kind of hypnotic, blissed out state. And I was going to just be in this state where I would turn off my brain, and it wouldn't be thinking at all. And I would just be in this, like I said, blissed out, some sort of hypnotic state. Well, that wasn't it at all. Um, and I think some people do check out when they do shamatha, sort of like pushing the pause button on a video. But then you would just push play again, and you know, there isn't much to be gained in that. You just lost some time in your life by blanking out. So it's not about a blank state, which is a good thing because our brains are thinking machines. So if we try to just turn it off, that's going to be a little frustrating. So it's okay if thoughts sort of come and go, they just pass by. Just like the movement of the breath sort of kept passing by, right? So the thoughts can also pass by. We don't have to run after them like a puppy after the first thing that moves. That's the difference. So if we run after the thoughts and then make a whole movie around the thoughts, then we're no longer in shamatha. But if we just, sit here and let the thoughts go by, and it really helps to pay attention to, for example, breath. Or sometimes we use an image that you can rest your eyes on. We can use just ambient sound, whatever passing sounds happen to be there. It's been great. One time I was teaching shamatha at one center where we were renting space, and it happened to be Disco Saturday. And suddenly this dance music was on. And so I said, we will now switch to shamatha focused on sound. And so that was actually what we were using as our object of support, as it's called, to focus on. And so just letting the sounds come and go, we could still remain in peaceful resting, or shamatha, shine. So it actually, I don't know about other people, but it worked for me. So again, there is an example of life intervening and it being okay. There's a way that you can make it actually work for you. So that's an example of that. Well, I feel like I've been talking a lot. Now I want to give you another experience of shamatha, but this time, of course, I'm not going to sneak up on you with it. We'll actually do it officially. And it's not going to be a lot different. So one thing that helps is posture, because how the energy moves along our spine affects our nerves, affects our brain, it affects our thinking. And so an advantageous position is to have your back relaxed but straight. So imagine yourself to be like a marionette with a string coming from the back top of your head up to the ceiling, and you're just hanging there. So your back naturally falls into a straight position, but it's very loose and relaxed. Interestingly, I find that I have fewer aches and pains when I'm sitting if I do have my back straight, because it's physics. If one vertebra is stacked on top of the other, like a column, then it doesn't take a lot of effort for any particular muscles to hold my back up. So there are kind of various levels to this, and that's why this relaxed, supple, yet straight position works so well. Now, when you pull up on that string on the back top of your head, it sort of pulls you up. And I don't know if you saw that, but my chin went from this to down a little bit. And my back again becomes straight. And you want your belly hanging forward like a Buddha belly. It's nice to have, if you're sitting on the floor, it's good to have a cushion, a firm cushion under your butt, so that your butt is higher than your knees. because then your belly falls a bit outward and your back naturally falls into a straight position without having to use a lot of effort to hold it up. So here you are, your nice, relaxed, straight position. And in our tradition, we like to have our mouths just a little bit open and our eyes just a little bit open. And our eyes are gazing downward, which helps the mind to settle a little bit. But we keep our eyes open so that there isn't this huge difference between on the cushion and daily life, because eventually, right, we want those things to come together. And also, if a little bit of light comes in, it literally illuminates our brains. And that's a good thing. And some feel that they tend to go into movies just a little bit less when their eyes are a little bit open. But with the downward gaze, really, they're only halfway open. And the mouth is open because it settles the energies. There are energy channels that go through our nostrils. And so not having a lot of air go through the nostrils allows our energies to kind of relax, which helps our minds to settle. So that's the position. You can be cross-legged, you can be in a chair. Either way is fine. And the hands can be in your lap. They can rest on your legs. Not a big deal. And let your mind come again to focus its attention on the movement of breath, the experience moment to moment, whatever is happening with breath. The movement, that sensation as you feel that movement. And perhaps that coolness across your mouth as the air moves in. So if we think about past and future and movies, it feels more like the wild ocean. If we focus on breath, on this moment and this moment and this moment, we come to rest in now. It's quite natural to forget and remember and forget and remember. Chase after thoughts and then notice and settle. Pay attention. And then the puppy dog mind goes off after another thought because that's its habit. And like a good owner, we just gently bring it back. And when it settles again, even for a moment, we give it a pat and celebrate that our mind was aware at all of the distraction, which is unusual and a good thing. So reason to celebrate. And celebrating this settling, which feels good. And as we do this again and again, it actually strengthens desirable parts of the brain. So if you do a lot of rounds of forgetting and remembering in one session, that's a good thing. So again, settling on breath. And one more breath, kind of nice to savor. And we'll leave it there for a moment. I'd like you to stop and write down how you feel right now. Just a couple quick notes. And then while you're writing, I'd also like you to write a couple quick notes about what happened for you. And now, anybody who wants to share, if you click on the orange chat thing in at the bottom, we can begin to share with each other, if anybody would like to, how you feel right now. Thanks for that sharing. Ah, yeah. So I don't know if everybody can read this, but Diane's saying more peace, agitated and worried today, and I'm sure we all are having a lot of that these days. Ah, floating and kind of in a fog. Well, I don't know how much practice you've had with shamatha, but you know, just the fact that you were aware of the fog actually is a level of awareness. I just want to point out. Sometimes we can be in a fog and that's the last thing we'll do is notice it. Less thoughts, calmer, less tension in my shoulders. Then when we start, oh, I have to agree with that. Feels like waking up from a nap, like calmness. A strong reminder to return to practice more when it is needed most, rather than following the puppy. You know, there's some kind of weird thing where most of us, just when we need practice the most, is when we tend to kind of let it go by the wayside. I don't know what that is. And then I go back to practice and it feels so good. And I feel so much more centered and able to navigate life. And I'm like, why did I think it would be a good idea not to do this? relaxed, a little sleepy, aware of my posture, balance. You know, sometimes when I relax and notice that I'm sleepy, I actually was beforehand. I was tired maybe, and I didn't even notice. I don't know if that's true for Nan. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, no, first I want to ask, what happened? Oh, and somebody else is feeling more alert. So, you know what? It changes every time you do it. It's a different experience. Anyone want to share what happened for them during that little practice? Also, I'd love to hear any questions. Oh, I'm seeing what happened to me was I started feeling weird about my eyes half closed, like I was dead, but then it settled. Interesting. Well, it is an adjustment. I first learned with my eyes closed and my mouth closed. And so it was an adjustment for me doing it this way. And now, of course, you know, as with many things, I'm totally in this habit and wouldn't want to do it any other way. And Teresa is saying, I was unable to keep my eyes open. Well, maybe you're tired. I don't know. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, and I'm seeing Donald. So, although you didn't ask a question, I'll just say, um, I tend to be a perfectionist myself, and I can get caught up in doing it right. And of course, then I've lost the main point of the meditation. So just be easy with yourself, and you know the posture is an evolution, just like the rest of it. So eventually, as with any habit, at first you have to think about it and have it sort of in the foreground, and then eventually it sort of goes into the background, and it just becomes kind of what we fall into from habit. Habits are really a strong, powerful thing. And when we change them, at first we have to pay a lot of attention. And after that, then it's just what we do. And habit, then, if it's a good one, that can carry us along. And so that's a good thing. Let's see. How long would you recommend? Oh, no, first I'm going to say, not sure about the breathing and mouth a bit open. Breathe through the nose or mouth. Oh, breathing through the mouth. In our tradition, we breathe through the mouth. And again, it's just slightly open. But because there are channels that go through our nostrils, and we want those channels to sort of stay settled, that's why we breathe more from the mouth. Now, you don't have to like hold your nose and block your nose and not allow a single bit of air to come through. But just, you know, breathing more from your mouth, through your mouth, so that you don't stir up those channels and those energies. That way the mind has more of a chance to settle. Let's see. Oh, how long would you recommend doing shamatha in a sitting once it is comfortable? So that really depends on how new you are to shamatha. At first, I would say like 5 minutes is just great. You know, 5 good minutes of, you know, sitting and watching your breath or some such thing, you know, focusing your mind on a visual or the breath or sensation, that sort of thing, for the 5 minutes is good. And with a downstay with a puppy, you start with short amounts of time and you slowly build up. And my puppy can do a downstay for an hour, but she couldn't right away. I think probably 15 seconds was about what she was up to. And then we just and then of course I gave her big rewards and pats, good girl, and gave her a treat and everything. And that's what you can do with your mind. And then little by little, you can expand that time and your mind will be able to settle to the point where there are people who can sit in shamatha for hours at a time and their mind really does settle quite a bit and they can see between the frames of the movie more and more. Let's see. Do you recommend mentally noting thoughts or sensations or feelings that come up? That is often recommended. I personally find that I tend to then get kind of caught up in categorizing. Is this a thought? Is this a feeling? Is this, and so I just sort of figure the point is that, that I realized I caught myself in the act of following after a movie. And that's a moment of awareness. So yay. And this little celebration for that. And then settling my mind back on whatever it was paying attention to and celebrating that resettling, which feels good. And then having it stay there as long as possible. And then, it's going to wander off again and so on. So those 4 stages have been studied in the lab and they've watched the brain actually in action when it does that very cycle that I just described, forgetting, noticing, putting it back on the thing to focus on, having it stay there for a while, and then forgetting again, noticing again, etc. And so that cycle, again, the more times you do that in a shamatha session, the better. It's more moments of awareness, realizing, oh, there's the movie. I've caught myself in the act, and more moments of settling your mind, letting go of the movie and settling your mind, and more moments of staying on whatever you're focusing on. And all of those stimulate important parts of your brain that you actually want to develop and create pathways in your brain between incoming senses, because we're paying attention to the incoming of the sensation senses or the visual or audio, right? But also allowing a space between the incoming and outgoing and cultivating that space. Can you imagine how an advantage that is in everyday life? And because then we don't go into immediate knee-jerk reaction or defensiveness or habitual things that are totally unconscious. There are bridges made between the incoming senses and our frontal lobes, the parts of our brains that are the most resourced for meeting the challenges of life. So Dan Harris likes to say that it's like doing bicep curls for your brain. And of course, you're building capacities then. So to do a little bit of that every day, you don't have to do a lot of minutes of stomach crunches to develop nice abs, right? Same thing with developing the brain capacities. And I found this really to be true, especially if I've let go of thoughts again and again. I've been following this movie and then I realize it. And one of my mantras is, I don't have to think about that right now. And so I let go of it. And I found that in everyday life, there were moments where somebody would say something challenging to me or they'd be, upset or something. And I could easily get triggered. And I think, I don't have to. I actually don't have to get pissed at this person right now. And I let go of that. And then I have much better responses available to me. So I can say that, from my own experience, not having been in a laboratory, but been in life, as I've sometimes said to myself, this shit really works. So let's see what other, So somebody's saying very aware of mouth breathing, and it felt dry. Yeah. Again, your mouth isn't that open, and I find that I swallow more when I do the breathing a little through my mouth. But that sort of thing, again, over time, seems to sort of fall away. So just hold it lightly, and if it's driving you crazy, breathe a little through your nose for a while, and then come back to maybe, gently breathing through, and your lips are just barely open. So hopefully it won't get too dry. So Diane is asking, isn't our tongue on the roof of our mouth? Just the tip of your tongue is meeting where the upper palate meets your teeth. And so that's a finer point that I wasn't going to mention, but since Diane did, we might as well go with it. And that sort of closes a loop, sort of like an energetic loop, like putting two wires together. So that's why that's done. All right, well, Jay, so what about when I'm not completely suck into a thought in a movie, but I notice they are coming up again and again while still somewhat aware of my breathing? Yeah, so again, your brain is a thinking machine, and it will generate thoughts, and that's okay. So if you can treat the passing thoughts like each passing breath, same idea where it just comes and goes, and we remain in our seat, even though this or that thought comes and goes, and we register that, that's great. That's just fine. So one metaphor that I somehow, it works for me and I thought of one day is it's kind of like a rope passing across my hand. And as the rope goes across, I can feel the contours of the rope. I can feel the rope, but I don't have to close my hand and grab a hold of the rope and then get pulled off my seat and dragged down the road. But it's a part of the meditation to register whatever's happening, including the thoughts coming and going. And of course, we want to keep the majority of our focus on the object of support. Sometimes you can choose to have your passing thoughts be your object of support, but that's a little further down the road. I wouldn't suggest that if you're brand new to shamatha. And so now I'm thinking we can do, let's see, how much time do we have? I think what I want to do now is talk just a little bit about how this works with some follow through. So shamatha is meant to work together with Donglin and some of the other of the four immeasurables. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Donglin is a compassion practice. And it's a way of helping us to feel how we're not separate through the practice of compassion. Because when you think of it, if you're seeing somebody who's suffering and you're moved by that suffering and you're feeling compassion, that literally means feeling with compassion, then you're joining with them, you're connecting. And that compassion practice starts with compassion for ourselves, and then we step it out little by little until we're feeling connected to everybody through compassion. So in shamatha, we're settling our minds more and more until we can get to the point where we can slow the frames of the movie and maybe see between the frames. So we can see how we're not separate. We can see true reality. And Donglin, through Donglin, we can feel true reality. And so it's nice to alternate back and forth and do what we call round robin. I teach this and lead people through it online. And if you go to namchak.org, we have a bunch of videos of me leading people through meditations. And if you want to learn from the get-go how to do Donglen, that's what I taught last week. And we have a recording of that on YouTube. And so you can just email info@namchak.org if you want to get some of these links. And then it's easy to just click on it, and I will tirelessly lead you through Donglen, Shamatha, and round robin with the two of them. And we also have an e-course where I teach those things and one other practice that helps both of them be better. Oh, and it looks like Jess already put a link up. So I just wanted to say all that because then I want us to be able to settle into shamatha together again. So assume the position. Again, just like a marionette hanging from the ceiling through the back top of your head. Let your eyes rest downward. And once again, rest your mind on the moment by moment experience of breathing. And try breathing through your mouth that's just barely open, jaw very relaxed. Again, watching the moment by moment experience from the inside of the movement of your belly. Shoulders back and down and relaxed. Maybe you notice a feeling of refreshment with the breath coming in. And a deeper settling on the exhale. And after the inhale, you might try pausing to savor complete stillness. You might try that a couple of times. And perhaps even a moment of savoring after the out breath, before the in breath. Savoring those moments of complete stillness at the top and bottom of the breath. And again, celebrating that moment of awareness that's so much more than usual in noticing you're following after the movie. And celebrating settling back into shamatha. I don't have to think about that right now. I just have to pay attention to this moment of the breath. And now we extend our awareness to each other as we're all joined in this moment. Breathing together. Then we think of everyone in this world. We're actually all in this together. We're all from this one source, doing our best on this crazy ocean of existence, doing our best to surf. We feel ourselves actually joined. And so in the Tibetan tradition, we can feel as we're joined on this ocean that is actually ultimate awareness, ultimate compassion, ultimate love. We want everyone to be relieved of all suffering and to be happy, ultimately happy, always. Thank you, everyone. Thank you so much for coming to this call. So good to see you all. Oh, and Ken Rinpoche will be on for the next 4 Saturdays, I believe, and then I will be on after that. And so I'll see you then.
All right.
Thank you, Lama Tsomo. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Good to see you.
Stay well.
Thank you, Linda. Hear me?
Wait,
Yeah.
stay well.
Mom.
Hi, Mom.
Linda, thank you, honey.
Oh,
What's that?
That background makes you look very weird because your hair comes in and out.
I know. And my hands come in and out.
Oh, it's your hair. It's that moving door that I told you about.
Those are her parents.
Really weird.
All right. Bye, everybody.